Hey, great to have you with us today. We're chatting about something every engineer deals with: specifications, testing, and deciding when it's worth digging into outlier data.
Yeah, and we're putting a spotlight on Deming's three questions. If you ever wondered why specs sometimes turn into, wishful thinking, instead of reality, this is the place to be.
Let's kick things off. Imagine you've got a shiny new spec, you know what you want, but do you know how to actually check for it? And when do you say, yep, that's good, or nope, gotta fix this? Turns out, those last two steps are where everything tends to unravel.
True, and it's um, surprisingly easy to skip over the parts where you figure out how to test or what to do with the results. We'll break down why each part matters, how SPC, Statistical Process Control, pulls everything together, and what to do when your process throws out a weird result.
If you've ever seen a spec sheet and thought, well, that's nice, but how do I know we're really meeting it? Stick around. We're going to dig into how all this links to testing, data charts, and decisions that actually help you improve. So, let's start with Deming's first question. What do you want to achieve? That's your criterion. Everyone's got goals, but the trap is stopping there. Like, specs often say, this part must weigh 100 grams, plus or minus 2. But without anything about how to check that, you might as well be guessing.
Exactly. It's like putting up a sign that says, keep the room clean, except nobody says what counts as clean or how you decide if it's clean enough. You always end up with someone arguing the floors are fine.
That's where the second question swoops in. What's your test method? If your spec is a set target, you need a way to measure compliance. And not just look at it, but something systematic. You want to make sure you get repeatable, reliable results.
Right, and that's where SPC comes in. Process behavior charts and stuff give you a clear test method. Instead of just eyeballing a pile of numbers, you use a chart that tracks trends, variation, and signals. Suddenly, you see if the process meets the spec or if it's wandering off track.
If you try to use random checks, you'll miss signals. Or, even worse, chase noise. As one classic quote says, no data have meaning apart from their context. If you don't know where and how the data came from, you can end up making decisions based on random bumps in the numbers.
Yeah, so let's tie it back to Deming's third question. What's the rule for deciding what to do based on your test results? That's like the part people skip most. If your chart shows a reading out of bounds, do you recalibrate, throw up a red flag, or just keep going?
Exactly. The trick is only recalibrate or adjust when your process behavior chart tells you so. Don't just, tweak your measurement system every time you see a minor blip. There's this handy rule: never adjust, just in case. Only respond to real signals from the chart.
Think about it this way. You don't change the oil in your car just because you drove it for a day, right? You need a test method, maybe a dipstick or a mileage tracker, and a rule for when that dipstick tells you it's time. Otherwise, you're just adding problems.
Love that. The same goes for calibration in factories. There's a story where two technicians tackled calibration differently. One recalibrated after every measurement, doubled the error and uncertainty. The other waited for the consistency chart to identify issues, ended up with way better results.
That's the real life stuff. SPC doesn't just filter out annoying noise, it helps you set rules. When should you act, and when should you, well, leave things alone?
And outliers. This is a big one. Too many times, engineers chase after every strange point in the data. But SPC says, hold on. If an outlier's inside the 3 sigma limits, routine variation. If it's outside, that's a signal. Time for action.
I've seen people launch entire investigations over a tiny surge in their numbers, but the process behavior chart shows it's just noise. As another favorite quote puts it, the first mistake is to interpret noise as a signal. The second is to miss a real signal.
So the practical rule is, don't chase ghosts. Only chase what matters. If your data stays within the limits, let it ride. If you see the needle jump, don't ignore it.
Specs versus process limits is another area people mix up. Spec is what customers want. Process limits are what the process can do. SPC gives you reality, like the classic voice of the process. Don't confuse the two, or you'll end up reworking perfect parts for no reason.
Process charts help you translate those specs into testable limits using your own data. It turns the fuzzy goals into actionable checklists. That's how we bridge the gap between performance and potential.
And honestly, it's about moving from making wishful specs to setting up specs that you can actually test, trust, and use to take action. Operational definitions, consistency charts, and process behavior charts are your friends.
So, to wrap it all up, if you want specs that matter, you need clear criteria, a test method, and a decision rule. SPC makes those decisions practical, letting you filter the real signals from random fluctuations.
Don't waste energy chasing every wobble. Define, test, decide, and act when it counts. Thanks for tuning in.